It went from exponential potential to not being able to pay for the rental or even a bill from the dental. Now how's that for your mental? I've been through hard times too. The situation demands I bring the hard rhymes through. That's why I'm raw times too. Half despicable, last man to bring it through. Fast raps and critical stats, analytical slap. I'm hitting you smack. I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique. For party crashes, liquor spilling mayhem. Punk cops to play them.
Welcome to Breakup Gaming Society. I'm your host, the Colonel Hector Bravado from Starkville, Colorado, your guide to lavish and opinionated recommendations on drinks to drink, games to play, and hip-hop tracks to add to your playlist. But first, a bit of first-hand practical life advice. Have you ever heard of the deathbed exercise? I've seen everybody from investment advisors to journalists to religious scholars from centuries ago recommend this one. It's not meant to be morbid. You imagine yourself on your deathbed or imagine that you could write your own funeral speech. Does the life you see from that imaginary perspective match up with who you wanted to be and what you claim to value? It may be an uncomfortable conversation with the instance called you, but even though I messed it up, the idea of it stuck with me several mornings later. I have only one piece of advice. Do not do this when you're extremely horny. You will get a bouncy and entertaining, but extremely distorted look in the rearview mirror. So anyway, this is episode 79, and here's what I have teed up for you. Drink of the week. It's my most lowbrow choice yet, but it was necessary. Maybe you'll understand. Games of the week. Yes, games. My acquisition and play pace accelerated in spring and summer, so I've got 4 games to tell you about that all got played in June, from June until now. Capped by a visit from my man, Colorado Springs #1 food writer, Matthew Schnipper of Side Dish with Schnipper. It's been a good time. I want you to share in it. Track of the week. I love it when the legends stay on the mic, keep getting better, but take production cues that pay homage to the Golden Era template without sounding hidebound. I've got a track to show you just what I'm talking about. Let's do Drink of the Week, though.
Slap, I'm hitting you smack. I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique.
Oh, Drink of the Week. My fridge is now full of Michelob Ultra. I did some napkin math at the amount of calories I was taking in while slugging stouts and lagers in between the hard stuff and figured, as long as peak summer heat was rendering me nearly senseless and turning everything the same color, the color of a burned century in a town nobody cares about, why should I baby my palate with what are essentially long pauses in between belts of liquor? So I stocked up on Ultras. They're cold. They fall like 10 pins. It's like driving a F-350 through a crowd of particularly dull and brittle octogenarians. Barely registers in the senses. It just doesn't mean anything, and because there's nobody to answer to, whenever I finish one, I just hurl the can in any direction, regardless of whether I'm inside or out. Michelob Ultra delivers almost nothing, and demands nothing in return, which is just the kind of bargain I wanted when July broiled the whole region stupid. The only thing that would have improved them would have been the knowledge that I stole them. But I paid for them like a dick. I should probably steal a case and tell you that the stolen ones tasted better, but we already know they would. Am I letting you down a little bit here? I'm going to make it up to you next episode when we talk about a vodka cooler I made after those ranks of slender anodyne cans in my fridge finally gave out. This vodka drink is brimming with effort and the life force of multiple kinds of produce, but not this week. Anyway, we have a lot of games to talk about, so let's quit fucking around.
Slap, I'm hitting you smack. I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique.
Games of the week. Games of the summer. We're going to have a game parade. Check it out. Leading it off, Veil of Eternity. Buying a game with no solo mode is a major act of optimism for a Breakup Gaming Society. That's me. I was rewarded by having something like 7 different people join me for plays of Veil of Eternity, from hardcore Magic the Gathering dudes to casuals. And they all loved it. One of them had his own copy the next time I saw him. I have an organizational consultant pal on LinkedIn who said something I never forgot. Quote, "The best solution isn't always the most elegant one. It's the one people use." End quote. That leapt to the front of my mind as I saw people respond to Veil of Eternity again and again. Even one of the regulars down at the local game shop, who's a hardcore Magic guy and will not set down his decks for any kind of incentive, got up and played 2 games of this with me. That is social return on investment, people. Well, let's back up and talk about what this thing is. In Veil of Eternity, up to 4 people take the roles of magical beastie trainers, but this isn't Pokemon. The duels really are building scoring engines by drafting and deploying entities with and across 5 elemental families, with dragons being the most expensive and dramatic. You can have about 10 or so rounds to draft the right cards and summon the most effective tableau of cartoonish demigods, sea spirits, and minor monsters, etc. It didn't make much of a review splash that signals a runaway hit. I bought it because the host of 3-Minute Board Games on YouTube ended a segment about it with this towering piece of unqualified recommendation. This is a game you can play forever. Counter to this, I've seen a few enthusiastic playthroughs and a lot of meh in comment threads. The play is bland. It's not for us. Why is there a stupid standee of the titular dragon that doesn't do anything in the game, etc., etc.? And to be fair, it's not wildly thematic. And the dragon is for Instagram. It's Eternity the Dragon. They preside. It's their veil. Deal with it. And there is truth to the gripe that the lovely sherbet-colored central board off which the flopped cards radiate isn't exactly user-friendly. People have mixed it. It's a divisive touch. Here's what it all comes down to, at least in my experience. This is a good game. It's not mind-blowing, but it's produced good contests and fun discovery of combos with interesting scoring duels. That is, until I made the mistake of setting it down in front of an unassuming and polite to a fault young denizen of the game shop who turned out to be a mentat from Dune or something. My God, the efficiency. The compute power. I didn't realize you could lose this game that badly. I've tilted with him 3 times and don't think I've come within 15 points of him even once. But here's why I think it works. The first 4 turns are a slow-burning fuse that provides some uptake time for new players to learn stuff like how you run a turn and how the 3 categories of card timing effects work. There doesn't look like there's a lot happening because the economy is tight and the amount of active cards you're allowed to have is capped by the count of the turn marker. If it's turn 3, you can only have 3 cards summoned in front of you. That's the max. But in turns 5 through 7 and 8 through 10, hoo boy, the Roman candles go off. Or they better. You get the delight of watching your first few critters ping off each other, and then there's this step change and brain burn when you suddenly find yourself with 5 cards in play and active, 4 new ones flopping off the user hostile sherbet star in the middle, and a fistful of them still unsummoned, and those few remaining turns feel anxiously short indeed. There's a lot to think about in that compact playtime, but play forever? I think the tentative fan base of this game is right. This is a solid, fun game that's going to need more cards at some point, which it looks like South Korea-based Mandu Games has on tap with a planned Artifacts expansion. But until then, it's the base game is proved to have more than enough fun in it for me and a few of my Trinidad pals. Next up, Wingspan. So outside, in my low-slung barn-style garage, I finally got the payoff for having my trunk of my car covered in shit for 6 weeks. And the barn swallows produced their first batch of weans in their little mud nest. 4 little peeps, undifferentiated fuzzballs that didn't seem to yet have the musculature to do much except rest their pistachio shell beaks on the nest's edge. The adults never seemed to understand that I also lived there, and they flew around an alarm whenever I backed in and out. I swear I counted 3 adult-sized birds in there. Were they running some kind of polycule? I didn't understand what they're up to. It was making me anxious. So I needed a system that made all this understandable. I learned the solo version of Wingspan. Now, Wingspan is a new game that you've never heard of before. that I am telling you about for the very first time right now. It's about birds. Frontier Geeks down on Main Street had a copy, and I'm still hearing the solo mode is good years after its release, so I bought up the copy. I needed a wholesome theme. Over winter and spring, I pushed A-10s and Apaches over desert hex terrain, dealing death to a wide variety of real countries in fictional scenarios. For the next month, more murder as I learned how to play my copy of Final Girl, Madness in the Dark. A game where you score points by attracting birds seemed virtuous and worthy. So, by the second night I've got it, I'd punched out the cardboard and built the little birdhouse that functions as the dice tower and got everything out on the table. And I will say, it's as gorgeous and inviting as everybody says it is. Bright food counters, clusters of pastel wooden eggs, information-rich player boards in deep greens and blues, and of course, the hand-illustrated bird cards themselves. It's a monument to the virtues of thoughtful things made by humans in an age of unthoughtful things made by former humans. Zuckerberg! Excuse me, seem to have inhaled a feather. So it's a jewel to look at and captivating to touch, but dang, I never bounced off a rule book so hard in my life. I've played games more complex than Wingspan. I've taught myself games with multiple rules references. But for some reason, I just couldn't envision the flow of a turn or get the 10,000-foot aerial photo I wanted in the book's programmatic approach to gameplay. But Liz Davidson of Beyond Solitaire bailed me out here with her excellent and compact How to Solo video on YouTube. I watched it once, and then everything on the table gelled. Thanks, Liz. So I ran a game and started to experience the satisfaction of watching birds appear and start sparking off effects in the various habitat bands of the beautiful playmat that you're in charge of. And I figured out how to manage the Automa, or Automa. I still see people pronouncing it both ways. I don't know what the definitive definition is. Tell me, please. And I wished for two things. One, slower birds. Let's frame this as what it is. An extremely subjective peeve and not a flaw of the game. It was the bird churn. I loved the cards and their rich information, but they were going by on a conveyor belt, which I know is standard practice for a set collection and tableau building drafting game. I get it, but something about the nature theme just made me crave for something that kind of stayed in second gear. I wanted to engage with these things, have them become characters, but the speed at which they appeared and disappeared, by the time the 3 bands of my personal habitat boards started to get, populated and a little bit thinky, couldn't remember the names of the ones I had, and I wasn't savoring their singular nature. I was just scanning for name-scoring combos or nest types, and they stopped being something I was invested in nurturing. They were just things I was trying to snap together. The drafting tray gets cleared so often. One of the coolest things is seeing the board that represents your nature preserve start to populate. But for me, the mid-late game destroyed the delicate affinity I have, I'm sitting there with a bunch of birds I couldn't feed, wondering which one I kept for a single attribute. I'm sure there's a reason the tray clears, and I'm definitely a fan of games where shifting conditions make you hop from one decision to another instead of doing your grand plan, but I don't know. I wanted to be reverent in front of nature and play the game at the same time, but the speed of that felt at odds, at least in my experience. The birds vanish as characters for me, but stuck around in increased complexity. I gave myself a test to see if I could remember the name of one bird I successfully placed on my 3-band player board. I couldn't, even if I did admirably fill up my forest zone and place a couple handsome flyers in the grasslands and the wetlands. By the last turn of my first contest against the Automa/Automa, it's an aspect I start disliking intensely. Insert name of bird here, we hardly knew ye. But let's, after one play, let's subject Wingspan to the deciding criteria. Am I going to play solo mode again? Someday, yes. It's chewy and pretty enough to make me want to see it blossom in the hands of a future self who is a decent intermediate player at least. But it's not going to be any time soon. I'm going to get Final Girl and Thunderbolt Apache Leader back on the table a few times before I unbox Wingspan again. This is not a priority solo play for me. It does not stoke my hunger. But I do plan to try it again. I also want to see what it feels like when a couple others are populating their habitats side by side with me. I have a feeling that multiplayer would be more fun than I had solo, but that's a guess. I would also like it noted that in the time since I last checked on the baby barn swallows and wrote these notes, they are on the wing. Parents and four baby birds, all 6 of them, circling the property at dusk with their quick turns and choppy micro-descents. They're launched. The fuzzballs were viable, people. For this, I've awarded myself 768,000 bonus Wingspan points. Next up to the table, Cascadia. This is the nature game that ate my summer. I bought it about the same time as Wingspan, noticing how it was one of those titles that sticks in the Board Game Geek Top 50 Hotness rankings for more than 2 years after its release. That means something. That with the positive reviews, like something's going on here. So I bought it. I got it on the table at first in pickup games down at the shop. Each time appreciating the growing contrast between the ludicrously simple play steps, which is just choose a piece of Pacific Northwestern ecosystem and one of the 5 animals that live there, and then place the terrain tile and the animal tile in your growing honeycomb of tiles. Cascadia throws you little curves because the tiles are never going to come up for drafting in quite the same pattern, and neither are the animals in each of them. Bears, salmon, hawks, elk, and foxes demand different scoring patterns and a different drafting and placement strategy each time. True to its theme of rewarding harmony, almost every animal will have a role to play if you want a good score, but fine-tuning the balance against the, for me, comforting lack of knowledge about what's coming up next from the tile stack is a tasty puzzle with good round-the-mouth heat. Then I started playing solo games, and everything has been a blur since. I have not been so transported, so riveted by a game since Thunderbolt Apache Leader over the winter. The signs it's sticking? Getting it on the table for at least one play is number 1 on the list when the first pour-over carafe is ready in the morning. I put off meals. I'm going to repeat this for the few listeners who know me. I put off meals to play this. Hunger is a rude interruption to what I am experiencing. I'm on that Chinook salmon and red-tailed hawk rock. The score pad is filling up with solo games as my mind dances with the thing. Susses out small tipping points and synergies in the scoring cards, learns to track the relative species, terrain balance simultaneously. I started scoring 70s and 80s over my first weekend solo games. By Tuesday, I was regularly in the 90s, and now I'm regularly busting 100-pointers, although I have not gotten that ascended 110 plus. I missed it by 5. I'll get there. I leave completed games on the table because the Northwestern terrain grid with its animal token patterns is so pleasing and tells an oblique tale of accomplishment. I got almost nothing done 2 Mondays ago, including bathing, but this was not a wasted day. This was finding new parts of my mind that got populated with the vocabulary and logic of Cascadia. Chromatically and geometrically pleasing, inviting to the touch, and for me, the perfect blend of pace and analysis that kept rewarding me with mega doses of satisfaction off small improvements in play. So, on the 5-star addiction scale, with 1 being someone leading a drug-free and peaceful life, and 5 being, if you love me, please drive over here and tear this from my quaking hands, Cascadia is an 8. I would smuggle animal tokens in my ass if I had to go to jail. I am not kidding you. Little bit of parting advice if you're going to dive in. I think this is great solo, great for groups, and also great for families. But here's one caution. One of the coolest things about Cascadia is the variable scoring patterns for each species and how different combinations of animal cards will add subtle extra zing to each ecosystem's puzzle. However, you're going to get tripped up if you just rely on the card text and illustrative diagrams for all the animal scoring variants. You'll be very well served to spend some time with page 11 of the rulebook because how you interpret some of the scoring cards seriously dampened the flow of this otherwise utterly approachable and addictive title. And last up, we have Cockroach Poker. So way back in episode 23, we played Cockroach Poker. It's a quick-moving bluffing game where you're rewarded for breezy fits of lying to your friends and tricking them into acquiring sets of cards with nuisance species on them. I blew the dust off my pack a few weekends ago because I wanted a bar-friendly title to play with Matthew Schnipper of Side Dish with Schnipper, a newsletter you should be reading if you want to know what to eat and why in Colorado Springs. Or Trinidad, because he came down in August to scout our modest scene and reconnect for a drink. I met him and his gal Lauren at the Market Bar on Commercial Street. The Olympics were on. Local ranchers were tipping a couple cold ones. Matthew and Lauren got some food from M Squared, and we got Cockroach Poker on the table. The game is dead simple. You get dealt out a fistful of cards with spiders, scorpions, rats, and the like. On your turn, you target another player and pass a card to them face down. You tell them what kind of critter it is, or what you want them to think it is. They can call your bluff or pass the card along to a new player. They can tell the truth about the card, or a different lie. If somebody calls you and the card is what the person who passes it says it was, guess what? You acquire that critter, and it goes face up in front of you. There are 8 different creatures, and the first player to get 4 of a kind has lost, then the rest of the players win. So as it turns out, Lauren is a former criminal attorney who punished both Matthew and I for our chief failure, chattering too much when we passed the cards. She figured the more we talked, the more we were lying, which was generally true. Then both Matthew and I tried some reverse psychology stuff where we just add extra layers of chatter and try to turn our nervous tics into an advantage, but all that ended up happening was we kept prattling our way into bad passes. He and I were in a sort of suicide pact, stacking up cards on each other, while Lauren calmly watched us self-destruct. I think Matthew lost when he guessed wrong on one of my passes and acquired a 4th stink bug, but I'm not positive. I had a buzz, and Matthew and Lauren still wanted to see the Trinidad Lounge, where I got very drunk, and they got very tired. I read Matthew's write-up of our sleepy town a few weeks later and understood why. Schnipper and company hit, sampled, and thoughtfully considered more places here in 36 hours than I have in the last 4 years. While I was scuppered with a Sunday hangover, they marched the Goldenrod Trail at Fisher Peak State Park and still managed to hit Levada for some beers from a microbrewery on the way home. I'll just tell you what I told Matthew when I saw the piece. Quote, "This is probably the best, most generous, and thoughtful treatment I've read about this place. This feels like the canonical travelogue of Trinidad at this point in time. I'd be proud of this if I were you," end quote. And if you're one of my neighbors, you should be proud of it too. I saw my adopted region with new eyes. Check out the piece at his Side Dish with Schnipper on Substack. That's sidedishschnip.substack.com, or keep up with him on Instagram, Matthew Schnipper, which he spells SCHNIPER. You ready for some hip-hop? You better be, because that's the next stop on the tour.
Slap, slap, I'm hitting you smack, smack, I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique.
So track of the week is Trick Dice by eLZhi and Oh No. This wins because of what's getting adopted, not, what I think the top 20 of all thing when I stop and think about it, but what do I want to play over and over and over? For the last couple of weeks, it's been this song, so that's QED. I can't get enough of this. It's a category of song I love. It's a microphone legend on their artistic victory lap. They're relaxed. There's not a word wasted. And in some ways, they're even better now than they were. That's what eLZhi, who was one half of Detroit act Slum Village, which I think was also produced in part, was one of the ways legendary deceased producer Jay Dilla made his name partly with them. That's exactly what eLZhi is doing here, except this time with a producer called Oh No. But the track is, oh, hell yes, give me more of that, because let's talk about the production. Mixed board dudes who are grounded in the golden era approach to things, but they find a way to give it some kind of weird little contemporary twists. Czarface is brilliant with this. I don't know how they keep dropping an album a year since 2013 that's just as fun to listen to as the last. They're like the AC/DC of underground hip-hop. Same handful of tricks over and over, but you just keep playing them. Hit Boy has been doing this to great accolades in recent years with some of Nas's LPs. And Oh No does it here. Check out the intro. Some of those samples could have come out of a Beatnuts or Pete Rock track circa 1993, but Oh No freshens up that. As my ears pick it apart, what I'm curious about is this. There's an opening melody that sounds like a xylophone or a vibraphone sample. It has that jazzy golden era uplift that was so common in the early 90s. Those strings that come in. Not only do they add a menacing note that totally shifts the mood, but they seem to melodically shadow the vibraphone. Are they sampled from the same cut? Or did Oh No extrapolate them? Or somehow find some strings in his crates that matched it that well? It's all just speculation. But let's look at eLZhi's bars. The wordplay, schemes, and metaphor run like a vintage Benz. Here.
Welcome to my mental torture chamber. Every line's a scorcher, brightly lit torture flamer. Burn your soul slow like ether, reefer and rice papers. Why catch the vapors if you're not a chiefer? Those who put their money where they chief were, pushed out of Mother Earth before Father Time can bury them beneath her. Strapped across, buckled in, I get them bucked, they toss knuckles in the hood or cruise the high seas, swashbuckling. Try please, niggas know my steez. The eye sees it going downhill, make sure you buy skis. I paint a picture just as ill as by ski. Yacht where I josh hard to stomach with dry heaves. End up in exile, losers with a sex dial. You bit off more than you can chew, that's true as Das Effect style. I took a thick slice of pie from a quick heist, looking like I betted on myself, palming trick dice.
I'd show you more of the vocals, but true to the fact that even the old dogs give some ground to the contemporary, I don't want to give away the whole song. Like a lot of Ultra underground stuff from Griselda, Makami, Vinnie Paz, and many others since the late teens, there are only 2 verses. But they're gems you can rotate in the language centers of your brain over and over. Every time I hear some new lock-and-key rhyme scheme, replete with a philosophical piece of wordplay, let me know if you hear what I hear. Here we are. That's the end. I have been your host and friend, the Colonel Hector Bravado in Starkville, Colorado, reminding you to hit my donate page at breakupgamingsociety.com if you want to support the show and get one of my fun cocktail booklets. Until then, as always, may you fight long and well, and travel far, and eat lots of things along the way, and learn how to spot the subtle but powerful scoring opportunities of foxes, and wash your ass. Heck, you can even head over and wash mine if you've got the extra time. I've been really busy optimizing my solo Cascadia play. My hygiene is a mess, and my ass is a wreck, so if you can get over here as soon as possible, that would really be great. Just look for the several animal corpses in the driveway. You'll find it.